Whenever there is a Starship launch, SpaceX focuses just as much on the regulatory side as they do on the technical aspects. This level of scrutiny is unique to the United States. Here, even if your rocket is perfectly built, you cannot launch it without the proper permits. After the launch, multiple agencies will review every aspect of your mission to see how it went. If they find any issues, they even have the authority to ground the rocket indefinitely. Last week, we witnessed another Starship launch that achieved many significant milestones for the first time. However, the FAA was still reviewing the launch for days and finally released their findings. In this video, we will dive into the details of their review and discuss what it means for Starship, and whether this poses any challenges for SpaceX and Musk. Before we delve any deeper, please make sure to subscribe to our channel for future updates about Starship and SpaceX's other groundbreaking achievements. Looking back at the initial orbital flight tests, especially the first one on April 20, 2023, the FAA posed a significant challenge for SpaceX. This initial orbital test was eagerly anticipated, but the lead-up to the launch was marked by delays and regulatory hurdles. SpaceX had to undergo an extensive environmental review process before getting the green light from the FAA. Despite SpaceX's extensive preparations, the FAA required detailed assessments and multiple safety checks before granting the launch license. When the launch finally happened, Starship successfully lifted off but exploded over the Gulf of Mexico just 3 minutes into the flight due to a mishap. Musk has been clear about his frustrations with the FAA. He criticized the agency's regulatory framework as outdated and ill-suited for the rapid pace of space innovation. He once tweeted that the FAA's regulations were designed for a handful of expendable launches per year, and that under those rules, humanity will never get to Mars. The April 2023 launch led to an extensive investigation by the FAA. The agency identified multiple root causes of the mishap and outlined 63 corrective actions that SpaceX needed to implement. These included redesigns of vehicle hardware to prevent leaks and fires, strengthening the launch pad, and adding more rigorous reviews in the design process. However, it's important to note that the time between launches has been decreasing steadily. After the first flight test, it took 212 days of work for the FAA approval, and preparation before the second launch could take place. Following this, it took 117 days to launch for the third time. The most recent fourth launch occurred after just 84 days. This acceleration is largely due to a more streamlined process with the FAA, along with less preparation needed from SpaceX. The introduction of systems like the water deluge system and the reduction of initial damage repair time have also contributed to this faster turnaround. When flights go according to plan, it simplifies the process with the FAA, resulting in quicker approvals and preparations. What made the fourth flight approval process different was that the FAA and SpaceX reached a unique agreement before the launch took place. SpaceX proposed 3 specific scenarios that would not require a mishap investigation: the failure of the vehicle's thermal protection system during re-entry, the failure of the vehicle's flaps to provide control during re-entry, and the failure of the Raptor engines during the landing burn. The FAA analyzed these scenarios, assessed the risks, and confirmed that they met public safety requirements, subsequently approving them. This agreement meant that if any of these 3 issues occurred during the flight, SpaceX and the FAA would not have to conduct a formal mishap investigation. This was a significant shift from the standard procedure, where any failure typically triggers a detailed investigation. By pre-approving these scenarios, the FAA allowed SpaceX to focus on the overall mission success without the potential delay of investigations. During the fourth flight, SpaceX indeed encountered several major problems. For example, there was an engine failure, loss of heat shield, and damage to the flaps. While these issues indicate that repairs and upgrades will be necessary, the pre-approved scenarios mean that the FAA can overlook the engine issue, as it was part of the agreed conditions that would not trigger a mishap investigation. This streamlined process allows SpaceX to prepare for the next flight without the usual procedural delays. The issue with the flap will also be reviewed rather than investigated by the FAA. During the descent, one of the flaps failed to operate correctly, resulting in a loss of control. Despite this, Starship managed to complete a soft landing in the ocean. The FAA's working process after Flight 4 is expected to be greatly shortened. This flexibility, combined with the new pre-approved scenarios, means the next target, Flight 5, is even closer. Given the decreasing intervals between the recent flights, it is realistic to expect that Flight 5 might take place within the next 3 months. For Flight 5, SpaceX is likely to incorporate several improvements and upgrades based on the data from Flight 4. This includes addressing the issues with the Raptor engines, the thermal protection system, and the vehicle's flaps. Additionally, SpaceX might attempt to catch the booster with the tower arms, a significant milestone if successful. This would involve a precise landing burn and careful navigation to align the booster with the catching arms, a process that has been thoroughly tested and simulated. Yesterday, SpaceX revealed footage from additional angles showing the booster's landing in the Gulf of Mexico. The video begins with an aerial view and then shifts to a perspective that seems to be from a buoy at sea, positioned at the intended landing site. The booster descends at an angle and ignites its engines as it enters the clouds, slowing down and orienting the booster nearly perfectly vertically. SpaceX cuts the video back to onboard footage just as the booster makes contact with the water so we don't see it bobbing before it eventually tips over. Nevertheless, the initial approach and engine ignition highlight the mission's goals and the landing over water. Before the launch, SpaceX emphasized that the fourth flight test shifted their focus from achieving orbit to demonstrating the ability to return and reuse Starship and Super Heavy. One notable aspect of these tests is the extensive use of cameras. Starship is equipped with over 20 cameras, both onboard and around the launch site, to capture every angle of the mission. These cameras help SpaceX analyze the flight and landing in great detail, ensuring that every aspect of the test can be reviewed and improved upon for future flights. In the video, you can see some large flames, likely related to the one engine that didn't successfully relight for the landing burn. The presence of these flames indicates a complex dynamic where the engine's failure could have led to a potential imbalance in thrust. However, the design of the Super Heavy booster includes redundancy to account for such scenarios. The booster is equipped with 33 Raptor engines, of which only 12 were required for the landing burn. This redundancy ensures that even if one or more engines fail to ignite, the remaining engines can compensate to achieve a controlled descent. The other 12 Raptor engines successfully reignited, providing enough thrust to slow the stage for a soft landing. This landing process simulates an eventual flight profile intended to bring the booster back to the launch site. In a future operational scenario, the booster will return to the launch site and execute the landing burn just above the tower. As the booster descends, it will slow down significantly, allowing it to align between the two chopstick arms of the launch tower. And that's all for today's update. If you enjoyed watching and found it useful, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.